think we slowly convinced him to make us do it tomorrow.
Okay. So yesterday we talked about basic trig graphs, sine and cosine, and translating them up or down and finding the equation of the midline. Tomorrow we're gonna have a quiz just on that. So tomorrow's quiz will be just like yesterday's homework. Super easy.
Oh, that'd be good. Just 3 questions on finding midline?
I think there's 4.
Oh,
Yes.
scary.
I think that.
I think there's 4.
So yeah, so there won't be any like recorded lesson or live lesson if you're not here. It's just the quiz. Make sure you take it sometime before 8 p.m. if you're not here. And then we'll play a game tomorrow. Any questions on that? Okay, so today we're going to talk about amplitude. Thanks. So amplitude, the amplitude of a trig graph is how far away from the midline the graph gets. Okay, so if you have something like, suppose you have a sine graph like this, but it actually goes up to 3 and down to -3. Then in this case, the amplitude would be 3. Amplitude is always positive. Okay? So you can tell what the amplitude is easily from the graph if you can locate the midline, which you should be able to do from yesterday. Okay? But from an equation, it's easy to spot the amplitude as well. It's just the number out front. So if you have something like y equals a sine x plus c, or y equals a cosine x plus c. Okay, we know that the c part of it is the vertical translation. If c is positive, then it slides up, and if c is negative, it slides down. But the amplitude is actually the number out front, absolute value. So the absolute value of A is the amplitude of the wave. Okay? If it happens to be negative, if A happens to be negative, you just make it positive to find its amplitude. But the fact that it's negative just means that it's flipped over the x-axis. That's all the negative would mean in the case. Okay, so if I had something like, for example, y equals 2 sine x minus 3. Something like that. Okay, I know that the midline would be at -3. So the graph would look like this. And then the amplitude would be 2. So it's just going to go up 2 above that midline and down 2 below the midline. So this would look like this. Just look like a sine graph, but twice as tall as normal and shifted down 3 units. Looks like that. Okay. Sometimes they'll also ask you what's the maximum value that the graph attains, or the minimum value that the graph attains. Okay. Okay. So to find the max or min, they gave you a graph. It's easy. You can just look at the graph, right? If this is -2 and -1 and -4 and -5, you can see that the max would be 1 and the minimum would be -5, right? But if they give you an equation the max is just equal to the midline, which is the C that I've identified up here. It's the midline, plus the absolute value of A. And the minimum is just going to be C minus the absolute value of A. But the midline happens to be -3, like here, the max would be -3 plus 2, and the min would be -3 minus 2. Okay? So if they gave you just an equation, they gave you something like y equals -4 cosine x plus 2. Then you know that the max would be 2 plus 4, and the min would be 2 minus 4. So this would be 6, -2. That's as high as the graph goes. That's as low as the graph goes. Kind of easy, right? Definitely review, I hope. So tonight's homework, it's like 2 separate things. I think it's 2, might be more. But one of the things is just identifying the amplitude from a graph. And the other thing is identifying the max and min from the equation. Okay, and then I think there's also a time thing where you have to like get the graph a bunch of times. What's that?
2 at a time.
Yeah, 2 in a time one. And I think the time one, you have like 15 seconds per problem. So watch the clock. Any questions? All right, that's all I got.
Wait, yeah, I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the 4 in here? Like before that?
It doesn't have anything to do with amplitude or anything like that. That changes the frequency, which we'll talk about tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.
It's like a lot.